Paul, it's a pleasure to have you back on the podcast today. How you doing?
Good, Adam. It's always fun getting back and catching up with you.
Yeah. No, same to you. We've done quite a few now, and it's always a pleasure to chat to you and always have good conversations. And I just kind of like we was talking earlier about what topic to talk about, and mentioned like getting out of the funk.
Hmm.
And I know like especially here where I live at the minute in the UK, it's like kind of heading towards winter times, getting colder. The nights are drawing in a lot sooner, and sometimes it's a lot more difficult to get up and go and do something because it's dark and you start kind of winding down. But yeah, like what do you kind of think about it?
Do you change your clocks? Because we fall back this weekend. Is that something you guys do, or do you keep it at the same time?
I i know that we do change the clocks at some point soon. I don't know the exact date, but we do.
Okay.
Yeah, is it we when they go back, is it? Or yeah, it's one of the.
Yeah, fall back, spring forward. It's funny. It's like when you fall back, it's much easier to deal with than it
Yeah.
is spring forward, because then you lose that hour. It takes me about a week to kind of get back into the swing of things after losing the hour. Um, but as a kid, I did not like fall back because it'd be darker earlier in the day, and I'd be like, I want to be outside, and I couldn't do it because of the change of time. But now, it's cool. But you're right. Now that it's getting into the winter months, it's darker when I get up. I normally get up between 5:30 and 6, and sometimes it's tough to do so. Luckily for me, I'm in a climate that doesn't get too cold. So I know a lot of people that are in the colder weather, especially if they have a heated blanket or heater going on, it's harder to get up because they see outside and how cold it is to start their day. So luckily I'm in a climate where that's not that big of an issue. But yeah, man, it's everybody goes through the funk. And we talked moments ago that you just recently got out of the funk. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. I basically, hadn't kind of like I do work out like, at home and things like that, but it's been a while since I actually kind of went, the gym
Mm.
to actually, lift weights and to, go on the treadmill or whatever. And yeah, I just kind of did it. Part of me was like, oh, I'm thinking about it. And then I was like, because it was dark, I was like watching TV. And then I was like, I just need to go and do it. So I just kind of went and did it. And I think I went for about, I think it was like an intense hour or so, and an intense hour and a bit. And I felt better afterwards. And part of me had that feeling afterwards of like satisfaction, and I was like, that's kind of what I've been missing. And if that makes sense. Like, you miss that feeling of kind of feeling, I don't know, like good, and like you've pushed yourself like physically, there's that feeling. It's like if you go for a run or something.
A finish of accomplishment.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think it had been a while since I'd kind of pushed myself that hard in that period of time. And yeah, and then it kind of cleared my head a bit. And then I felt like, more productive, or, it just kind of shifted the gears. And I think sometimes we just need that little kick, whatever it might be, to kind of shift those gears, from you know from time to time, keeping yourself in check, isn't it? I think, but it can be quite difficult because life gets busy, life happens, work, things that we need to do in our day to day. You know,
Yeah, most definitely. We talk about addictions to things, and
mm,
people do alcohol and drugs so they can alter their thinking, so they could be more, maybe feel in that moment a little bit more positive. Obviously, afterward they don't, but during that
yeah,
moment they do. And if you want something that's going to give you a natural high, that's exercise. You get
mm,
such a natural high. It's such good positive mental health for yourself to go out and exercise, whether that is lifting weights at a gym, whether that it is going for a run, whether that's just going for a nice long walk. Getting that heart rate going is extremely important for your mental health, or your physical health. So it's very important that we all make the time to do it. I know, Adam, I mean, you're one of the most busiest people I know. You're doing the podcast, you have a side coaching business, you have a full-time job, and I think now you might be in a relationship. So, it might
Yeah.
even be tougher for you to have time to go to the gym. So how do you put it all together?
Yeah, no, that's really, really good question. And I think it's it's sometimes, like for me, like I don't always plan things. I I have a calendar on my phone. I don't always write things down. I probably should more, but I think the way I do it is sometimes I just reach a point where I just feel it myself. I'm like, right, I need to do this now. I need to go and do X, Y, Z. But like you said, with working and doing a podcast and coaching, and I'm in a relationship now. It's kind of like learning to multitask, and I think that kind of self awareness of kind of like keeping yourself in check, if that makes sense. Like, obviously with a relationship, you need to, communicate with the person and text them and things like that as well. So I think it's being very kind of mindful where your energy is going and um, prioritizing things. I think in some sense and keeping it in mind. Like I'm quite good at having several things on my mind that I need to do. Like especially with podcasting, checking up on that. Like uploading content. I can kind of have these kind of 4 or 5 things running in the background in my mind. But I think any more than that, then I'm kind of lost. I have to, probably plan or write things down. But I think it's kind of constantly just checking in with yourself and seeing where you're at and how things are going. And I think if you're too tunnel visioned on one thing, then the other things slip away.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about, multitasking, have a lot on your mind, having to water the relationship and doing well in your job and doing well in your coaching business. So, when do you spend time for yourself and being present with yourself? Because I think that, I worry about that when you say that you have 4 or 5 things on your mind, multitasking. I mean, that's cool and that's great. And you're getting things done, you're very efficient, but when you have time for just to be present with yourself, just
Mm,
to slow it down for a second, to have your senses
mm,
enlightened with your touch and your
mm.
feel and your sight.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that's something that people should do, and I think I know in myself like my energy if I'm not okay, and if I know for a fact if I don't have that time to myself, that bit of time, I'm not as effective at what I do, and I just feel irritable, and I don't really want to talk to anyone because I'm I'm like just I need my own space to do whatever, and like I usually at the weekend I'll play video games with my friends and from in the town where I used to live, or I'll go for a walk or watch a film or just chill out a bit or even read. But I try and make that time, usually on a Sunday. Like I see my girlfriend like maybe Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday I will just kind of wind down and have that time to myself to do whatever. And I notice if I don't have that, then I just kind of feel overstretched.
You talk about not wanting to talk to anybody. I mean, I think that's what you do like 24/7, right? You talk on
Yeah,
your podcast, you talk in your coaching, and you talk in your full-time job because you coach it in your
yeah,
full-time job. So I can
yeah.
understand the times where you just don't want to talk, my friend. And I'm glad that you give yourself that Sunday, but like, what do you do on a Wednesday when you're just like,
Mm,
like I need some escape. I don't want to talk to
mm,
anybody. What do you do for
yeah.
yourself on a Wednesday?
I I think on a Wednesday I'm just kind of on the go. Like I'll go to work, and I mean I'm starting a new job next week, so I'm going to be training from home, so that's going to give me that time to probably recharge a bit, But on a Wednesday, generally, I'm pretty much working. I'll come back home, and then I'll be, walking my dogs and things like that. So I kind of get out the house a bit and clear my head. But usually on a Wednesday, I'm chasing up, podcast things, networking. Sometimes, I can get caught up in that till quite late at night. And sometimes I have to draw a line and be like, okay, enough's enough. I need to go to bed. But I'm usually fairly busy, all week. I think, especially with podcasting and networking, it's kind of constant. It never really stops. But I think you have to kind of just try and be balanced.
Well, yeah, especially when you network with people across the world. So it might be 2 a.m. for you, but it's like midday for somebody else. So
Yeah,
that's got to be challenging for you, because I know that that's what you do. I mean, you're friends with Brian and Greg, and they're in the
yeah,
States, and I know you have a lot of other friends in the States. So it's kind of an opposite schedule. So that's got to be
yeah.
a wear on you in that sense.
Yeah, it is tricky. I mean, there are times where I will be trying to arrange a call, or I had one the other day. I had a call with my friend trying to do a podcast, and like it was near my kind of dinner time, and his time was sometimes they clash because it's first thing in the morning for people is my dinner time, and it's difficult. I mean, especially like now I'm working, I'm trying to fit in podcasts and things after 5 o'clock or
Mm-hmm.
after 6 o'clock. But then I still have to have dinner and stuff, so I'm having dinner later. So it can be really tricky. I mean, if people live in the UK, it's a little bit easier because you can just say, okay, let's do this time. But I think you sometimes just have to show up, but it is very difficult trying to slot things in, and I'm sure you found that with doing calls as well, with
Mm-hmm.
people around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what I worry about you, man. I know you're a young man, and I know you can go, go, go,
Yeah.
go, go. But our topic today is about getting in that funk, and it's real
Mm,
easy to get in that funk when
mm,
you have 4 or 5 things on your mind: relationship, podcast, coaching, and then coaching at work, all constantly going in your head. There's times where your bucket fills up, and you're like, you know what?
yeah.
I just want to shut down. And that's when you get
Mm,
into that funk. Like, I don't want to do this right now. I don't want
mm,
to talk to anybody. I don't want to go to
mm,
work. I don't want to do the podcast. I want to do the networking thing. So I think it's
yeah.
important that you give yourself time, not just on a Sunday, but like, that's why I just mentioned Wednesday.
Yeah.
I just random during the
Yeah. Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
Give you that time to recharge, whether that just be 30 minutes where you can just let your mind zone out, where you're not doing absolutely nothing, where you're just sitting there, or reading, or whatever. But it's an activity that allows you, that creative juices, and allows you to
Mm,
just rest for a second, to kind of reboot yourself for the busy life that you live. And I admire you,
yeah.
man. I think that's great that you have a bar that you set for yourself is extremely high, and you're not just talking the talk. You're putting action into play each and every week. So I just hope that you give yourself that oxygen mask. When you go on a plane, put your oxygen mask on first before you
Yeah.
start helping other people.
Yeah.
That way that you can sustain this high level of action that you're doing.
Mm. No, I really appreciate it, Paul, and it really, really means a lot. And I've always appreciate your support and guidance. And I think, like, yeah, it does get busy. And I think, like, I noticed, like I told you recently, I had, situation at work at the place I was working. And I noticed, like, I put a lot of my energy into it, and I had to take a step back. I had to take, something happened, something occurred, and I had to take 2 weeks out. And I've never had to ever do that in my life
Mm-hmm.
in work. And I had to take, that time out, and that time allowed me to just recuperate, I think, and rethink things, and kind of we kind of prioritize, where my eggs are going, if that makes sense. Like, so yeah, it's definitely important to do that. And I think sometimes, like you said, people are on the go and then they're just completely depleted. But I think as long as you have the right sources around you and the right people to support you, and that you're self-aware, if that makes sense, with your
I think
energy.
that's the key right there, being self-aware. I think that's the number one thing: knowing your body, knowing your mental mind, going, okay, I can't, I gotta stop. I know that,
Mm,
we're in a society, especially us in the mental health world, Adam, that we always want to be like at a certain level, want to help everybody out, and want to get to that level. And I think that's a tremendous thing. But there's times where we're not at that level, and
mm,
we got to own up to that and say, you know what? I would love to show up today, but because of, me pushing myself for the last few months and not really giving myself that break,
Yeah.
it's really taken a toll on me. So it's really important that you mentioned it, that self-awareness, so you don't get to that factor where you get your bucket to that top level
Yeah.
where it has to pour out, where you're constantly just pouring it out every now and again. That way your bucket doesn't get filled up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. And I had a call with somebody once, and they said, what you just mentioned. It was like, you can't pour from an empty cup, and I've
Hmm.
done that many times, and I've got to that level where you go go go,
Hmm.
and then you're shattered, and then you don't want to do certain things, or you're just not yourself. And I think it's really important, what you mentioned, because I know people who have two jobs, and they'll do their Monday to Friday job in the daytime, and that's absolutely fine to have two jobs or three jobs. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's your energy levels. Like, I've got friends who have been working all day, and they'll go and do an evening job afterwards, and they'll do that 4, 5, maybe 6 days a week, depending on staffing situations, and they're like burnt out, and I think some people that I know, or people in life, don't like to be by themselves. They have to kind of be busy, or they busy themselves for no reason, and it's kind of crazy when you think about it. But there's obviously a reason why that person's doing it. But I think, like you said, society is very quick. Things are moving around very fast, and I think people sometimes don't always think to slow down.
Yeah, most definitely. One point I want to make is, people working 2, 3 jobs, some people have to do it. I mean, and
Yeah.
my heart goes out to them because they have to do that to make ends meet. And
Mm.
there's nothing they can't, they have to do it.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of them would say to me, Paul, I don't want to work 2 to 3 jobs, but I have to do it. I got to put
Yeah.
money on the table. I got to have shelter, mortgage,
Mm.
whatever's going on. So I get that. But even in those situations, it's important to give yourself 20 minutes
Mm.
of self-care, whatever that is for you. But I think it's
Mm.
extremely important. We talk again, goes back to that bucket issue. And then you spoke, I lost you said, what
Yeah.
did you say lastly about the society,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
on
It'll
the
be quick. Yeah.
yeah, you got to be quick and everything like that. And this is what you said that triggered me was a lot of people don't like to be alone. They want
Mm.
the stimulus, and everything like that. And yet that's very true. But the most powerful thing that you can do for yourself is being okay being alone.
Mm.
It builds a lot of confidence in yourself that you don't have to constantly have to
Mm.
be with friends at every moment of the time, that you're able
Yeah.
to entertain yourself by yourself, whatever that is, going for a walk, reading. I think it's extremely important that we be able to do that, because when you build that foundation
Mm.
that you can be alone
Yeah.
and be okay about being alone, then you seek healthier relationships. You see your worth a little bit more. You don't want to be in a codependent relationship. You don't need that, because you can be by yourself. And I think that's extremely important. I think the most dangerous people are the people that are okay being alone, because they're not going to put up with the nonsense, because they're okay with that. They're not going to be in a relationship just to be in a relationship so they're not alone. They're going to be in a relationship because they want to be in that relationship that enhances their enjoyment with somebody else. The moment that doesn't happen, they'll be able to pull the plug.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really great point. And I think, like you said, like being alone and okay in your own company is really important. And I think, like you said, in relationships, I think a lot of people kind of found that in COVID. I think, a lot of people found themselves, and a lot of people had to kind of push through a lot, if that makes sense. And I think, like, I remember, I'm just thinking about what happened to me. Like, I was in a relationship and it didn't work out, and it felt weird, because I was bound. I luckily with family, but I was kind of, more with myself, and I wasn't in that relationship, and
Mm.
it really gave me that time to think about things. And I think, like, and learning to kind of be okay in your own company. And I think, with how society is, and there's lots of different distractions, like people get so caught up in that, so they're not kind of always by themselves. They're kind of distracted elsewhere. But if you're comfortable in yourself, then like you said, you can kind of prioritize what it is that you kind of want in your life. That makes sense. You have more of an understanding of who you are, and yeah, and it's okay to be by yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think, like you said, as long as you're okay in yourself.
Yeah, and that had been a very tough period for you, Adam. Is having a relationship end and then having to go through COVID, and a lot of us are isolated from the world because of COVID. So that there probably a lot of emotion were to come up, but hopefully, and
Yeah.
you've manifested a relationship that you wanted going
Mm,
forward. And it sounds like you did, because now you're in a new
mm,
relationship. So I think that time that you took to kind of for yourself, even though it might have been tough, being lonely in a situation where, a lot of times when you break up, you can hang out with friends or do different things. But during COVID, you break up with somebody, you're just by your thoughts alone,
mm,
and you spend a lot
mm,
of lonely times with yourself, and your mind can go down a rabbit hole. So kudos to you of doing the right things in that situation, manifesting a relationship you really want to be in, and you
mm.
manifested, and now you're in it.
Yeah. No, thanks, Paul. It means a lot. And I think like, but sometimes you have to kind of go through that, don't you? You have to kind of go through certain things in life that make you more I don't know. I mean, it's like it makes you grow, I think, or makes you more resilient. And there's always kind of going to be curveballs kind of thrown at you, and it's how you kind of respond to that, isn't it? I think when you're in it, you don't really see a way out. You're just kind of in the muck. You're kind of in the funk, so to speak. You're just kind of in the weeds.
Yeah, you're in the weeds, and if you don't go through bad things, you can't be grateful for the good things, right?
Mm,
And I think that
mm,
that's what we have to gravitate towards, is being grateful in times of pain and suffering. I know it's not easy. It's very, very hard, but those are the times you really need to focus on the gratitude and the things that are going well in your life, because those are the things that are going to get you out of that funk.
mm,
Are focusing in on things that are good in your life, because your mind goes what you're thinking about. I
mm,
use this analogy quite a bit, and I think we've talked about it, Adam, is when you buy a car and you drive
mm.
that car around, and all of a sudden you see that same car that you just bought all over the city. You didn't see it before you bought that car, but now that you bought this car, you see it. It's because your mind's looking for it, and it's the same thing with the positive, negative mindset.
Yeah. No, that's really key. And I really agree with you. And I think, like you said, what you kind of seek, it kind of shows up, isn't it? Whether that's good or bad. And, like you mentioned, like difficult times in your life that kind of make you strong, and you have to sometimes go through that to kind of know, like to know what you want, and to know those struggles, and vice versa. And I know, we've spoken several times, and when we first spoke, like sometime last year, um, you mentioned like your kind of experiences that you went through, and it's quite inspiring, you know the situations that you went through and what you had to deal with, and where you are now. And you must like think back to those times sometimes, or to kind of push through. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, no, no question about it. You think about things like that all the time, but I'm not a robot. So, I went through that tough period of my life, childhood and such, with dealing with having cerebral palsy and such. But I'm a human being. I still have limited beliefs that come up in my head, and different various things that are hard in my
Mm,
life. Maybe I'm a little bit more equipped to handle it, but I still go through it. I mean, you
mm,
see some of these gurus that they go through a tough time, and they're now that that I'm that super level, I don't have any emotions. That's
yeah.
nonsense. You always feel emotion, and you always, you never not feel it. And so yeah, I mean, there's times in my life, especially in my line of work, we're in a similar line of work. I'm a coach, and so in a way, you're an entrepreneur, right? And there's a
Mm,
lot of times where I am by myself a lot, and there's times where I'm like, dude, this is kind of lonely. Yeah, I'm talking to people all the time and networking and stuff, but it's just, you just, it's a constant thing. And you see you reap your rewards by just your work ethic and showing up. And like I said, Adam, I'm inspired by your work ethic. I mean, like, I turn on Instagram and there's like 5 different posts I got to look at from you, and I think I'm very inspired by that, because that's good work. I go on LinkedIn, same thing. You got stuff going on there. I know you're not a Facebook guy, but you probably have a bunch of posts there too if you did that as
Yeah.
well.
No, I appreciate it, Paul. It really means a lot. And I'm actually locked out of Facebook. I forgot my password and I forgot my email address because I got a new
Oh,
phone. So I can't go into my Facebook or get it. So I'm like, but um, but but yeah, I think it kind of stems from that consistency of just kind of, it's like a muscle almost, isn't it? Sometimes, and sometimes, I mean, everyone's different. And I was on a conversation with someone the other day about this, and I was saying there's nothing wrong in not posting during the week or however many times. There's no kind of set limit of posts people should be doing, and it can be a lot of hard work. A lot of energy goes into it, thinking about it, posting things, structuring it. But I just get things that come to my mind sometimes, and I put it out there. Some weeks I don't really have much come to me, and I won't put it out. If it's like fresh content wise. And I think that consistency just kind of, I think, stemmed from the first lockdown when everything closed down. I was unemployed, and I just started the podcast, and I just kind of got so used to just that consistency. So if I don't do it, if I don't post for a week, it's almost like not going to the gym for a while. I feel it. It's it's like being in a comfy chair and having to get back out, if that makes sense. But you inspire me as well. What you post as well.
yeah. And a lot of people talk about how social media is bad. We spend a lot of time on social media, but like you, Adam, and to me, to agree me, is a lot of times we're creating the content. We're not, consume. I mean, we do consume it because I want to see what you're doing, because you'll inspire me to have an idea or something like that, and I think that's part of the work. But a lot of times we're creating the content. We're not, consuming
Yeah,
it, whether we're going in there and going, oh, this political person said this, so I'm going to go here, and then
yeah.
and then you go down that rabbit hole. A lot of the stuff that we're doing is we're doing our own work and establishing ourselves as the expert in whatever the field is, and that's what I'm trying to do. Is I'm trying to establish myself as the expert in the field that I'm working at, and that's what I'm looking at. And when I'm doing social media, I'm guilty of it. I've gone down the rabbit hole. I don't really comment about the political stuff, but there's some times where I'm just going down the rabbit hole, just watching everything, and it's not
Yeah.
for an actual purpose. I'm just going down the rabbit hole. But it goes back to that awareness thing. And it's like, when you're going down that rabbit hole, you're like, is this really productive? Are you doing something that's productive? Because sometimes when I'm scrolling, my main purpose a lot of times is just, I want to see some content that's just to trigger my creativity. And that's why I bring up like what you're doing, which is great. It helps me jargon things for myself. But being that creator of that content, I think is important, and I think is a good thing. I mean, if you're creating good, positive content for people to consume, who knows, you might be making somebody's day. And if you do, if that's what you do, then your day's success, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I think they're really good points. And I think, like you said, there's the people who create content and people who consume content. I think like there was this giant algorithm that's beyond my understanding of how it works, but it will give you a lot of the things that you might search for or trends or whatever. And I think it's easy to get caught in that rabbit hole, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think, like you said, like I noticed it the other day. I went down the rabbit hole, and after like 10 minutes, in my head I was like, what am I doing? I was like, what? Why am I on this now? Or what?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I need to go and do X, Y, Z, and it distracted me from what I had to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's that balance, and it's okay to go down the rabbit hole because that's kind of is what it is. But I think like we create content, and it's nice that we put things out there that other people can take something positive from. And I think, like, we have to kind of, in social media, we like it when we have people like ourselves, and we're connecting with other people who are creating good content. It's nice to look at what they're doing, support them, and vice versa. And I think, we sometimes get distracted by a random video, or you click something and then you click something else. And
Yeah.
I've been distracted by that a little Russian guy called Hasbullah. Have you seen him?
No, I'll have to check him
He's
out.
he's 19 years old, but he's like in the body of a child. He's got some kind of rare syndrome,
Ah,
like a real life Benjamin Button. And he's got all these crazy videos, and he's got friends who are in the UFC, and he's all over the internet. So I ended up going down that rabbit hole of watching his content for like 10, 20 minutes. But yeah, I think as long as you're mindful, and you're supporting other people, and you're putting something good out there, or if you can create something and someone gives you good feedback on it, it's really nice.
yeah, and that's what it's about. Having that sense that, like you said, it's okay to go down that rabbit hole every now and again, especially if you're having a rough go of things and you just want your
Mm,
mind off something. But I mean, if it's everything that you're doing all the time and you're not productive in anything else, you might just want to just take a step back and look
mm,
at it. I don't want to judge anybody on that. But maybe you take a step back, and maybe you put your phone out of reach every now and again, and so that way you
mm,
can complete the task you're trying to complete, because
mm,
it can be very distracting, and it can pull down your productivity, and sometimes it can bring down your mood,
mm.
because a lot of times the stuff that you see on the social media, it's false. You know what I mean? It's a false
Yeah.
life, and you think, well, why don't I live that way? Why don't I have that type of relationship with this
Mm,
person? I, this and that, and in reality, it's just a picture. You really don't
mm.
know what's behind the scenes of what's really going on, and that's something
Yeah.
that we all need to be mindful of as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really great message, and I think that's something that I've experienced as well, and I think many other people experience that. And like I said, it's just images, or videos or photos, and a lot of it is false, and a lot of things people don't see. They don't see what goes on behind the surface. They might see someone who's really happy or something in a photo, but they might not know that they may have experienced something in that week, or something might have happened. And everyone's kind of putting on a front in some sense, in some way. But I think when I say front, I mean, sometimes people might not be okay, but they're naturally wanting to be like, I'm okay. Do you know what I mean? Because I think that's what
Yeah.
we all do when we're not. But I think the reality behind it is that we need to be mindful of social media in people's lives, because you hear about it all the time, things happening, but then people don't realize, they wonder what happened to that person if they did something stupid, if that makes sense. But then their social media feed looks like they're okay. Um, and I think that happens quite a lot to people. But you have to take into consideration that, okay, that's probably not reality. That's just a front, because it can affect people's mood. It can affect your mood, especially if you see something that someone else has got or whatever. It can, you have to be very, very mindful, and quite disciplined, and not take it to heart, if that makes sense. Or how you reframe it. If you see someone driving a nice car or something, it's very easy to think, oh, do you know what I mean? Or you see everyone who's got something, but that might just be false, like you said.
Yeah, it's important that we don't compare ourselves to anybody else,
Mm,
because it's kind of impossible to do, because you don't know where
yeah.
their starting line is and you don't know where their finishing line is. So,
Mm,
um, worrying about if somebody's more successful than you, or better looking
mm,
than you, or whatever that might be, it's not going to help you at all. Matter of fact, it's going to hurt your self-esteem quite a bit.
mm,
One of the things that I tell people to do, if they feel like this person's more advanced, whether it be in their business
mm,
or in life or
mm,
whatever, reach out to that person and say, hey, how'd you
mm,
get to that level? And 9 times out of 10, they're going to feel flattered and they're going to give you some advice on what they did. And a
Yeah.
lot of times when you talk with them, they'll give you the backside of that story. You just see the sunshine and roses, and they'll tell you, hey, yeah, it looks like this was an overnight success, but you didn't see the 10 years of struggle before that. And gives you a little bit more perspective on it, that it wasn't just, I got into this business and now it's thriving. You didn't see the back story of the whole thing that they did to get to that level. And I think that's something to keep in mind. And whatever you own or whatever you get or everything like that, that doesn't mean you're happy. I mean, I know several people that are quote unquote successful, and and a lot of them I feel bad for, actually, because they don't take stock in their life and going, wow, just take a step back and like, wow, look at all that I accomplished, look at all I have done. They're like, oh no, this is not enough, I got to go get this and this and this. And it's, well, why? I mean, because one day we're not gonna be here anymore, and then what?
Yeah. Then what? It's I think that's one of those big kind of moments of clarity, isn't it? When you think about that, people, we all have items, we all have things and things like that. But I think if you're so reliant on those things, you can't take those things with you, can you? When you think about it, when that point happens, and I think like people just need to be, I think, very grateful for what they had, don't they? People need to be grateful for what they have, where they're at, and kind of stay in their own lane, if that makes sense. It's like if I post content or if I do whatever I do, I'm not looking over people or trying to be someone else or trying to compete with anybody. I'm just, I think that's one of the things people try and do. They're always trying to compete with other people and things like that. And you just have to just create whatever you want to create for, your own reason. There's no, as long as you're happy in what you're doing, you don't have to have X, Y, Z in your life. I think it's, a lot of times it's the small things that create a lot of abundance and happiness. And it's really important.
You would think that something like Steve Jobs, right? How much money would he give up to be alive right now? I bet you would give up it all. I bet you would give it up all so he could still be alive right now.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think the way he lived his life was pretty crazy. I think, his kind of mindset. I mean, he was a genius in what he did with the iPhone and things like that and Apple, but I think like just the way that he kind of was, to me, he probably could have made some changes in his life. He probably would still be here, maybe, like it's kind of crazy. And I think when you're talking about people only see where people are now, if that makes sense, like, success or the business or whatever, and they don't see where they started from. And I think that's not always kind of showcased. And, Grant Cardone, the speaker, and he's in real estate, he started from nothing. And he talked about it in one of his clips. He was like, people always see the jets and all the rest of it. They don't see the struggles and all the crap that he had to go through to get to where he is. And I think people really like that. People really, really like to hear those stories of people starting out and taking the hits and keeping on going.
Yeah, it's authentic. It's a human being and showing those scars. I think it's extremely important. I think that's how I connect with people, is I show them who I am, warts and all. And because I show who I am, warts and all, I'm able to connect with people because they're like, okay, you know what? I see his human side. I see that he's not perfect and he's not portraying that he's perfect. And I can connect to his imperfection.
That's it. And I think it's being that, having that authenticity, isn't it? And being natural and being yourself.
Yeah, I'm 100%. It truly is. It truly is. Yep.
No, definitely. Are you okay for time, Paul? I know you.
Yeah, I got a few more minutes, but then I gotta get going because I got a show that I gotta prep for myself.
Is just kind of, is any other topics or is there any books you've been reading? Do you read?
I just finished The Power of Intention by Dr. Wayne Dwyer. That's a great book. That's a great book. Talking about manifesting your dreams, having perspective and having grace in yourself, not taking yourself so seriously. Really recommend the book. For me, it took me a long time to read, uh, because it's not a book where you can just like flow. I mean, it's a lot of powerful stuff in it, and sometimes you have to take a second to kind of digest what you're reading. So it took me a little bit longer than some of the other books I read, but I think I'm gonna start, and I think you already read it, The Green Lights with Matthew McConaughey.
Oh yeah, yeah, I've read that. Yeah,
You
you,
recommend it?
yeah, I definitely recommend it. Yeah, it's a very it's different. It's more. It's kind of like a self development book, but it's kind of got his own kind of
Flavor.
Yeah, that's the right word. Yeah, but I quite liked it. Have you got it? Have you?
I do have it, so I'm gonna
Oh,
start
nice,
reading it. I just finished Power of Intention yesterday, so I'm gonna start
nice.
picking that one up now.
Yeah, it's good. He went through some crap. I mean, it really
Yeah.
surprised me. You know, some of the things that he faced, especially.
Hmm.
I don't want to go too much into it, but yeah, he went through his fair share.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see how he's got that mindset of where he is now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm excited
Yeah,
to
yeah.
read the book there. So yeah, it'll be a good one. And I need to make a goal for myself. This is a goal for myself. I'm going to put it out there for your viewers and yourself to keep me accountable on this. Is I need to start to read a book that doesn't have to deal with self-help, because that's all I read. I read everything about self-help. I'm a coach, but I love it. It's my passion. But I feel like I need to read something else, a novel or a documentary or something different, because I get into that phase where that's all I read, and like I said, I love it. I absolutely love it. It helps me with my work, and I just all well enjoy it. But I feel like to make myself a little bit more well-rounded, I need to read other things besides those things.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I mean, you mentioned that, and I think you know, like when you're in this field, you do consume a lot of that kind of self help kind of content and books, and I think like it's important to always read other things as well, like even novels maybe.
Hmm.
I've purchased a few novels, and someone recommended me. I could go and grab it actually. Um, well, I'll mention to you. It's called like Creativity Inc. and
Creativity,
it's
okay.
Creativity Inc. Inc.
Hmm.
And it's about like the Pixar
Hmm.
the company who made it.
Ooh,
Um,
yeah. I'd be interested in that. I'm a big Disney. I know that
yeah,
Disney purchased Pixar, and I know it's different, but I'm a big Disney person.
yeah,
I read a lot about Walt Disney. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it'd be good. But
yeah,
it's just having that different kind of flavor, isn't it? I mean, I'm kind of starting that as well. I'm trying to read things that aren't personal development as well. But it's
yeah,
so tricky when you're so kind of caught up in that.
yeah. I mean, we both enjoy it. I mean,
Yeah.
nobody's forcing me to read it. I really enjoy it, and it helps me for my business. It
Mm.
really does. I'll be talking with a client, and I'll say something, and I'm like, and the client's like, wow, that's great. And I'm like, I don't know where that came from, but I'll tell you where it came from. It's from my studies.
Yeah. Yeah. So it all
So yeah,
helps.
yeah, absolutely.
But but yeah, no, it's I know you've got to shoot because you've got things that you need to do. But
Yeah.
it's always a pleasure talking to you. I'm really grateful that we can do this. I'm really grateful to be your friend, and it's always a pleasure. And I wish you all the best in what you're doing. And where can people find you on social media? That kind of best point of contact.
Two ways would be the easiest way. One is I established a Facebook group called Rewrite Your Story, and people from all over the world come together and they just support each other. They tell their stories, and there's no judgment. It's only support. We actually have meetup groups the last Wednesday every month where people come together, same kind of concept. We just come together, and people are allowed to tell their stories, and we're not there to judge. We're only there to support. So Rewrite Your Story Facebook group. That's an easy way to get in touch with me there. And I also have my website, a call to action coach, and I have my free ebook on there on how you can rewrite your own story. It's free. You just download it off my website. Those are the two ways to get in touch with me. I have my contact information on there, so I'm really easy to get it in a hold of.
No, that's awesome, Paul. And I love everything that you're doing. And I wish you all the best in all that you're doing. And I think it's really great that people can join the group, and they can talk about their story, and share that with people, and in a non-judgmental way.
Yeah, it's just a great group of people, and you can just feel the energy that everybody just wants good for everybody else, and it's just a great group of people. And I'm just grateful that
Mm.
they've came into the group and made it such a success.
No, I love it. And I'll definitely share and promote that for you and put it out there so people can kind of see it as well. And but yeah, no, I look forward to next time, and all the best with your day.
I appreciate it, Adam. It's always nice to catch up with you.
No, you too, man. You too. See you soon.
All right.